Hey guys, before we get started, we got a little business. Obviously, got to plug those socials: Facebook, Instagram, and X at Launchpad Pod on our website, launchpadpod.com, and on our YouTube. See our handsome fucking faces. I got to do a little plug up front. The project that I've been working on, The Block of Horror, is live now. Go to blockofhorror.com. You can go experience a virtual world, go watch some movies in the virtual movie theaters with other people, meet other horror fans, hang out there. Matt and I are going to be doing some events on the block in the next couple months. There's a lot of cool stuff to do. There's a mall there. It might be haunted. I'm not going to tell you whether it is or not, but you'll have to find out on your own. Fucking
Is
cool
the wait?
stuff.
What did you say? The mall is what?
Might be haunted.
I was gonna say, I feel like there should be robot sentries, right?
There are robot sentries in there. I put them in there myself.
Oh,
Because Kelly Maroney has a store in the mall. She is one of our ambassadors for the Block of Horror, and Kelly Maroney herself has a store in the mall. And I put a chopping mall killbot in her store. Why not? Why wouldn't you do that?
that's
Right?
awesome.
So yeah, you can go get signed autograph stuff from Kelly Maroney there. Killstar has a store. If you like spooky coffee, there's spooky coffee there. There's all sorts of spookiness. So go check it out. Blockofhorror.com. And of course, us here at Launchpad Pod. Check us all out. But enough chit chat and business. Let's get on with the show.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
All right, welcome to the Launchpad Podcast. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Matt, and also I gotta say, I'm very proud of Rumi. Rumi showed me this thing that he's been working on for like a year, more than a year, probably, right?
Yeah, it's been working a
And
long
he
time.
showed me a while ago, and it was pretty cool when it wasn't even finished. So nice finishing it up, Rumi. Nice job.
Thanks.
It's pretty awesome. We're very excited about it. I'm proud of my little buddy.
Yeah, we did a good thing. We'll have some fun in there, man. I'm excited. The film festival we had, Blocktoberfest, just fucking rock. Thanks to everybody who showed up to that. And we'll keep doing some more stuff, man. We're in the radio station. You can go listen to our podcast, the Launchpad Podcast, in the radio station at WBOH, which is cool. I like being in more places. So another way to listen. Man, it's been a fun October. I've been really busy, but doing some fun stuff, watching some good movies. I watched two movies recently that I'm kind of excited about. Um, One was called Dark Harvest. Have you seen this movie or heard of this movie?
I feel like I've
2000.
seen at least it on streaming. I haven't watched it, but I've seen that it's on there.
It's a 2023 movie about Sawtooth Jack. Um, any horror character named Jack anything, what do you think his head looks like?
Jack Lantern.
Oh yeah, oh wow. It's like the most unoriginal name to name anything pumpkin related is Jack. Okay, fine, fine. The movie is actually, I really liked it. A lot of people hate it, and I read the reviews, and it's like that thing that you do where you're like, I don't disagree with anything you said. You are 100% correct in all of that. It just hit me in the right way that I'm like, thumbs up.
I
Good,
get that.
good for you, movie, because it takes place in the 50s, but it doesn't feel like a 50s film. It feels like a 28 Days Later or like a 30 Days of Night movie because it's the same director who did 30 Days of Night. But it's like these 1950s kids in a shitty town, and every Halloween, Sawtooth Jack shows up and tries to march towards the church, and the town, all the boys in the town have to kill him before he gets there. It's a cool premise, some pretty cool fight kill stuff. It's kind of melodramatic, but if you're like, if this is a movie from the 50s, if you had filmed it in the 50s, this feels actually pretty accurate. It just looks like a slick 2000s film, so it feels anachronistic in a weird way.
When was it made? In the 2000s, you said?
23, it came out 2 years ago, and
Hmm.
I didn't just completely fell off my radar, but it was fun. Like, I like the monster, I like the twists, I like the characters enough. They're
Is it
super
straight
melodramatic.
horror or is it like also funny?
Straight horror, very
Okay.
much. It screams like Stephen King movie. Like,
Okay.
it feels like a Stephen King movie, very much like a Stephen King movie. I guess it is like a young adult novel, or maybe it's just a straight up horror novel, but I liked it. I think it's worth checking out. I think a lot of people are going to be like, no, the characters are stupid. And you're like, yeah, but again, it's from the 50s. And if you were watching a 50s movie, like imagine Steve McQueen in this role, or like the Outsiders, like they all act like this, like, oh man, my gang is mad. Oh,
Hmm.
they're about to do a dance.
I think we've talked about it before about how hard it is to make a movie that is a homage or a like a love letter to a genre, not genre, like a timed genre. Like if you're making a horror movie, okay. If you're making a horror movie that's supposed to feel like an homage or a love letter to 70s horror movies, you gotta hit it, because if you don't, it collapses, I think, one of the bigger tent poles of what you're trying to do. So even if your movie is good, if you're making if you make a good horror movie and it's good, but you also want it to hit that note of 80s nostalgia, say, if you don't hit that note right, I think it throws the what do you say, like maybe the balance of the movie off. So it's like a tricky thing. It's like if you're going to do it, you have, in my opinion, you have to hit it. Otherwise, you're doing yourself and your film a disservice.
It's also hard though when you're hitting a decade that very few people remember.
Which I think that might work in your favor. Whereas, like anyone who's seen a horror movie knows 70s and 80s horror backwards and frontwards. It's very, very specific. 90s is a little bit more like vague and general than
But
80s or
50s,
70s. Yeah.
50s, your knowledge of 50s is movies from the 50s or like Back to the Future. And Back to the
Hmm.
Future was very felt authentic to me. But
Sure.
Back to the Future is also like, look at this silly situation.
Right. Well, again, if and Back to the Future is a comic book, right? Like it's not taking itself seriously. It's science fiction. So and it's laughing. It's making jokes. It's in on its own premise. So I feel like you get away with a little bit more than if you make a serious horror movie. Just like if you made the same horror movie, you're talking about Dark Harvest, but it also is like it's jokey and knows what it is, like a Scream sequel. You can again kind of get away a little bit more because you're showing me how fake this is. It's not just a horror movie. It's a horror movie that's also a joke, and it's also in the 50s, right?
I wish this had more of an aesthetic to it. Like it felt like an early 2000s movie, like really dark, lit, like literally there's no light,
Yeah.
and it felt very slick in the way that 30 Days a Night, Jennifer's Body, like an early 2000s horror film, like Scream, like The Faculty, like it had that vibe to it. It felt more like a 90s horror film set in the 50s, but if you had given it a 50s aesthetic, I think it would have worked more towards the melodrama that some of the actors were having. We're like, hey, she's my girl, eh? And you're like, oh, okay, you're overselling it there, Slick, or whatever his name is. Stay gold, Pony Boy. Like it was really doing that sort of thing, but in a way that felt it didn't feel authentic to its time period. But that's okay. Again, like I said, criticism aside, it held my attention, was a unique enough premise, and had a good enough twist that I was like, well, I want to find out what happens. And some of the kills were solid, so I'm here for that.
Scale from 1 to 10. What do you give it?
Um, on a 5-star thing, I gave it 3 stars, but that's not saying much because I give a lot of things 3 stars. On a 1 to 10, I give it a 6. It's above average. It
Okay.
which to me, like a 6 is like I would show somebody this. I don't know if I'm going to watch it over and over again, but
Right.
like I'd be like, yo, you should check this out for sure.
Okay.
I
All
mean,
right.
yeah,
I should check
I
it
like
out, but not bump it to the top of my list.
no,
Okay.
definitely put it like third. Like if you're on a double feature and you're like, I'm a little sleepy, but I want
Got
to
it.
finish a movie. I have enough to finish a movie. That's a good
Got
one to
it.
finish because
Okay.
again, it's cool.
That's like a great way to actually frame it for me, like a great way for me to look at it.
It's your second feature that you might not make it, but you're gonna be okay if you do.
I gotta say, man, you fucked me, and I text you at the beginning of this, and you were like, "I told you that for sure." And like, granted, if you guys have been listening for a while, you know that I don't really fucking know how computers or social media work. I just tried. I put whatever Rumi says to put on there, and he says, "Go put this on Facebook." I'll write it on Facebook. Put this picture on Facebook. Plug this. I do my best, and I'm probably not doing it correctly or as good as it could be. But Rumi put something. I think Rumi put stuff on Instagram, And because our accounts are linked, it comes up on the Launchpad Facebook sometimes, and it comes up as like a story. And it's like a little video or a little meme that pops up. And you had one, it was like, I don't know, top 30 horror movies or top 30 recent horror movies or something like that. And I ran through Rumi's list because even if Rumi loves something and I end up hating,
I
you know what
suddenly
I'm
know,
talking about?
I suddenly know what this is. Okay, keep going.
Even if Rumi, so even if Rumi and I very much disagree and I can't understand where he's coming from, I do like to see the things that he likes. Because I care about Rumi and I care about his tastes and I care about what he either enjoys or doesn't. So if he slams something, I kind of want to see what he says, someone whose opinion matters to me, and I enjoy your opinion, even if it is different than me, even if I think it's flat out fucking wrong, like Warriors. I like hearing it. So it's like when I want to like check, I want to see, okay, what did he like about this? What did he not? So there was this list, and I forget how many entries it had, but it was at least 20 or 30. And I ran through, and there was exactly one on there that I had, or two on there that I had not seen. I watched one of them. It was about it was Brian Cox was an undertaker, an embalming guy, and his son,
the
and
Jane Doe, yeah, yeah.
and that was
Autopsy
like,
of Jane Doe.
and that was actually I liked it. It was really good, not award winning, but it was good and certainly worth the watch. It had
Unique
great
enough,
atmosphere,
super unique, like in a way that you're like, I've never seen this premise before. It is so unique. I'm genuinely don't know where it's going with this premise.
Correct. I very much had that feeling,
Like,
and that's
ooh.
my like best feeling right now. My most relished feeling right now is being in a movie and be like, I do not know where you're taking me. I don't know what the next act is, and I don't even know either where the danger or the dread or the plot points are coming from. Is this a supernatural thing or not? I kind of like not knowing that.
You
So that
gotta
movie
see the
definitely did it.
substance, dude. You got to
It
see the substance.
that movie was really good. The tone was good. It did have a couple things where you're like, it's a ghost. And you're like, well, wait, no, it's not. And you're like, oh, it's a murderer. You're like, oh, but it's not. And then you're like, it's okay, cool. So I like that one. So
I
that
like
was
that movie
one.
a lot. Yeah.
That was one on my list that I didn't know, and I didn't know anything about it too. That was the other thing, is it's not like a movie like The Substance that I haven't seen yet, but I definitely know what it is. I definitely know there's buzz, and I know some of the buzz about it. But that was a movie that I had no knowledge. The other one on there that on Rumi's list was Audition, and I had no idea what that was either. But I immediately put those two on my watch list, and I very quickly watched that Jane Doe one, and was like, okay, that was good. I'm excited to watch this other one. So last night I sit down to start the audition, or just audition, not the audition. And there's three of them. And there was one that was clearly the one I thought Aaron wanted, which was an Asian horror movie. So I texted him, hey, audition on your list was the Asian horror movie, right? And he was like, what? And I was like, that list you put like a little while ago. And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, there was like a Facebook thing popped up and it was on the Launchpad. So you did it. And it was like top 20 horror movies. And he's like, he goes, audition's okay, but it's really slow. And he said something like it's required reading or something like that. Like you have to see it at some point. And I remember being like, oh man, now I wish I didn't say anything, because now I'm going to notice how slow it starts and I'm going to notice how required it is. So let's say at this point now I'm watching the movie, Rumi's already given it like I don't remember putting it on a list. Now that you say you remember, what was the list?
What I think it was is Instagram is doing this thing where somebody just compiles like a bunch of movies and they're like, pick 7 of your favorite. I didn't put the whole list together. I just circled 2 or 3 or 5 of the ones that I thought were worth checking. I didn't compile the whole list.
Oh, I do remember that you had circled ones that you had not seen. I remember that.
Oh, now I know exactly what you're talking about. This was literally just a big list of people like, oh, if you check the ones you've seen, and I'd seen all but like 2 of them. And one of them was like The Wailing, and one of them was the other one. It wasn't like good or bad or like rated. It was just like, have you seen all these movies? They're great. And most of them were pretty good, but some of them I was like, oh.
Yeah, I fell for it. Even though I didn't read the fine print, you owe me an hour and 55 minutes.
Audition didn't do it for you?
No, it's if you guys haven't seen Audition, it's Japanese. It's 1999.
Here's the quickest way to describe this movie. It's the Japanese Misery, period.
Yeah, but there's a whole element that gets played twice where you don't know which, like something happens. Misery, like, you're right, it is Misery, But then he like wakes up and it was a dream, and you're like, oh, that didn't really happen. But then he wakes up again and it did happen. And you're like, oh, did it happen? Or is this like not exactly an unreliable narrator, but it's the same idea of like, wait, which part of what I just saw was a dream, and which was it a dream within a dream, or was it no dream at all, or what? And then you're like, either way, I didn't walk away from it with anything. Like there's one or two decent effects or gore, but like it's literally one scene of that. The rest of the movie is just, exposition and character development and moving the story along. It's not necessarily slow as a movie. As a
How
romance movie, it would have been pretty interesting. And as a
how
drama,
foolish we were when this movie came out. It was like Asian extreme. Like that was the definition of Asian
in
extreme.
1999,
That
yeah.
movie set extreme on the map. People are like, "Oh my God, I don't know if I can handle this movie." And you go back and watch it now and you're like, "This shit happens on Sesame Street."
Well, it
Fucking
had a very
Abby's
Saw vibe
cutting off
because, like, yeah,
cookies
you're
legs
seeing
and
like you're
shit. Like,
getting it's a torture that when you get to it, it's a torture movie for a minute, and like that's the only horror really aspect that there is.
yeah,
The rest of it, there's really no other real scares or anything. There's no
it's like
scares, there's no tension, there's no build.
extreme. You just wait till Tokyo Gore Police comes out. You just
Yeah,
wait
so
till
there's
Meatball Machine comes out. Like you didn't see shit. Visitor Q, suck 'em. You don't
so
know shit.
it was kind of a bummer. I watched that last night, but then luckily I rinsed the taste in my mouth with Night of the Creeps, 1986,
I
and I
love
gotta
that
say,
movie.
that's not a movie that I grew up with. That's a movie I watched like I think actually post college. Like I don't think I think I must have been 25 or older when I finally saw
Yeah,
that. But it definitely is one of those. If you guys haven't listened to our old episode where we talk about the VHS covers that haunted our dreams as children when we would walk through the video store and see these movies that we knew nothing about except the front and back cover art. This is not one that scared me, but it's one that interested me. And I know the one that my store had was a zombie prom date.
your
And I
dates are
remember being like,
here. Bad
yeah,
news is they're dead.
they're dead. And
Yeah,
it's you watch it and it's awesome. And it's Tom Atkins at like what I would consider his best. It's almost like Halloween 3 level crazy, but like I would say even more effects, and it knows what it's trying to do and it's having fun. So Halloween 3 thinks it's a real horror movie, but we're laughing at it. Night of the Creeps is like, oh man, can you imagine if there were zombies that were infecting people with worms that shot out of their mouth and they came from space, and there's a whole sequence, two sequences in space about that. And it's like, and imagine if the only way you can kill them is fire, so they start shooting them in the head with a shotgun, which splits the head open, and someone else flames them with a flamethrower. And you're like, and there's like witty banter between the two main male leads for half the movie, and it's like there's nothing not to like about this movie. Like maybe a little more nudity, but like for a 1986 movie, but like there's no bullshit subplot. There's no bullshit love plot. There's a funny, horny, lovesick, college guy subplot, but it very quickly turns into misadventure with zombies. So you're not like worried about their actual love story. They don't have a girl in it just to be a girl. And Tom Atkins is just that grizzled
oh,
old, detective
he's
that
so
we've seen
good
a
in
million
this.
times. But it's so good, and the way he plays it, it opens strong, it opens fun. The effects are really good, and it's definitely one of those movies that, like, for sure, I enjoy more every time. And it's one of those that I'm like, why don't I own this on 2 or 3 different mediums? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, why don't I have a couple different editions?
I don't think I own any of this either. Every time I watch Return of the Living Dead, I like it better, and this is
Sure, yeah,
this
yeah.
is
Very
in
same
that same
flavors. It's
vein.
almost same
Yeah,
universe almost, right? It very much feels and looks the same aesthetically, but it's the same thing of 80s. We were talking about genre decades. 80s was such a great decade for horror, but there is a real specific pang in that decade of movies that were like, let's have fun with this. We can do it serious or we can do it campy, but let's have fun. And it was like,
yeah.
let's spend the money on the puppets that we need to make this, you know, decapitation sequence work.
Oh my
And
God.
like, it's fucking fantastic. Let's spend the money to make a full suit creature, because in that third act, no one's going to be expecting that. And like when that shit happens in those movies, you're like, damn, this is perfect. This is perfect for it. And I feel like this is a great example of it. Where like watch it by yourself. Watch it if you actually want to see like a horror movie.
Yep.
Watch it if you want to see a campy fun movie. Watch it with a bunch of people and some beers. It's good across the board. Whatever itch you're trying to scratch, it's probably going to do it, you know? So
Nailed it.
that kind of
It's
saved me
perfect.
after audition. Yeah, it really, really is.
It's on par with like Slither for me. Like in that, like Slither's
Agree.
like
Yeah. I mean,
Slither's
again, same
literally like
universe, right?
trying to make that thing happen. I loved it. Like speaking of fun movies, I watched one that I just had the most fun with that I had slept on for years and had no clue that this was this good. And this is
Brokeback
1987.
Mountain.
Oh man, so good, man. I mean,
I haven't seen it, but I really want to.
better than the Hulk for sure. Uh, um, this is Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2.
Oh, that's right. You texted me and I got so excited about this.
So this movie is renowned to be terrible. And I was like, it has awful reviews. But now the reviews are starting to go up and people are like, no, it's great. And I told Kate, I was like, this actually is probably terrible. So I don't know. And she's like, okay, let's check it out. And it it starts off terrible, like really melodramatic. We got Michael Ironside in it though, and he's great. This high school chick is a total bitch. Like that's how this movie starts. Is they're like this chick, she does what she wants, she gives no fucks, and she gets lit the fuck on fire at prom. It's like the scene from Carrie opens with the scene from Carrie where, but instead of pig's blood, she gets lit on fire and dies. Jump to a few years later, and this girl at her high school is like trying to find a prom dress and find some material in the basement that was Mary Lou's, and she starts to become possessed with Mary Lou's like evil ghost. And it's pretty boring for a little bit, but then suddenly it gets great. Like just shoom, steep cliff ramps up, and you're like, what is this movie doing? Turns left and right, crazy good kills, really interesting hallucinations. There's this moment where like girl falls asleep in class, and you're like, oh, here comes the Freddy Krueger thing. And she wakes up and the chalkboard's like writing creepy shit, like, ah ha ha, I'm gonna kill you, whatever. She walks up to it, and all of a sudden, these hands come out of the blackboard and pull her into it, and the blackboard turns into water. She's sideways on the wall, drowning in the blackboard water, and then it solidifies, and the letters that were floating in the water solidify. And I was like, worth every minute that I've spent watching this movie.
Yeah.
Took a minute to get there, but now you've kicked me off. Now, from that point on, she's evil. She's killing her friends. She's stalking people. It is murders left and right. You have some alien level crazy shit. There's some telekinesis kills that are just out of nowhere. So cool.
A touch of almost lesbianism that then results in probably my favorite kill slash sequence in the movie.
Because you don't see it coming. And I don't want to spoil it because I don't want people to see it coming.
I like that. Okay.
You have no idea that you just don't know. There's multiple times where this movie's like, you didn't know that was coming, did you? And you're like, no, that doesn't make any sense. But I'm so on board right now because I didn't think this movie was going to be any good. So you actually can't piss me off right now. It's like we're going to have like an alien level fucked up chest burster scene. Or you deal with it. And I'm like, I'm on board. Thanks, movie.
And I would have to say, I've seen Prom Night 1. But I don't remember a single thing about it. So
we did a whole episode about how it sucked. It was called Slashics That Suck.
This is definitely then one of the few sequels that outshines the first, and like no doubt, right? There's no comparison. There's nothing from the first one and the second one, right? The second one is a standalone, even though it's called
completely batshit different. Yeah, completely batshit different. There's no magic in the first one.
It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of, like you said, it's a lot of good kills, and it definitely is one of those movies that's like, oh yeah, she's like back from the dead, and you're like, okay, and they're like, and she's magic, and you're like, but like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, like telekinesis, and you're like, but, oh, and then you're like, oh, that's how she killed her. Never mind. You don't need to explain why. Just keep doing that. And it does.
It does such a good job of being like dropping your like the movie starts and you're like, oh, my expectations are in the gutter right now. And then all of a sudden it's like, yoink, Surprise. We're actually a fun movie. It's awesome. I recently watched Jennifer's Body, the Megan Fox movie.
Yeah, I never saw it. Is it worth it?
It's fucking great, dude. It's
Great.
surprisingly awesome. Not like in a fun, campy way, like as a really good commentary on like female bodies and body autonomy. Like it was batting so ahead of its curve for when it came out. And when it came out, their entire marketing play was like, oh yeah, Jennifer Fox is fucking hot. Yeah. And you're like, yeah. And it's like, yoink, that's not what that movie's about.
I already knew that. I'm not paying $14 to go see that.
The movie is not about how hot Megan Fox is. It's like that's not the point. Like that is literally the antithesis to the point of the movie. The point of the movie is like don't treat women like shit. Don't objectify their bodies. But it doesn't stand on a soapbox to do that. It fucking kills a bunch of dudes and has fun with it. And I actually thought it was a really solid, good, pretty campy movie, but it's not having fun like Mary Lou. But I put Mary Lou in this movie in that sort of vein where like its message and what it's trying to say is way smarter than the movie had any right to be.
Gotcha.
I definitely think you should watch Jennifer's Body. But again, I was always in the mindset that this was a shitty movie. And then you come in and you're like, oh, it's actually good. And if I want it to be shitty or I wanted it to be fun to make fun of it, that's not what it is. So it makes it difficult. And I think that's why I kind of like, it's like one of those movies where like the trailer told me what it was and it's not that. Well, then what I wanted it to be, if it's not that, it's not that either. So you're kind of like, well, movie, what are you? And it's like, well, I'm a different thing and you're either going to like it or not. So go in expecting to see something that you're not expecting. It's worth it.
Do we see her body at least?
No, that's the point of the movie, though. They make that point. You see her body.
I'll watch Transformers.
Yeah, I mean that's what that movie's for. This movie is not, yeah, not for her body whatsoever. They tease you continually with it, but that's the point the movie's making. It does that really smart thing because a lot of movies like I Spit on Your Grave. It's like, hey guys, isn't assault bad? And you're like, yeah, I know that. And they're like, I'm going to show you for 20 minutes how bad it is.
Yeah, right.
I don't really want that movie. And they're like, okay, but it's going to be okay because then we're going to get revenge on all those people who assaulted her. And you're like, no, I didn't need those 20 minutes to know that. You could have just started the movie after that, and I would have been.
Yeah. You could tell me that happened to her, and I'll believe you.
So I think that this movie, if you're going to make a statement about objectification of bodies, don't do the thing you say don't do. Like, don't objectify the body to then show me that, because that would be the antithesis. I mean, some people disagree and be like, that's all I came to the movie for, which the trailer led you to believe that's what it was for.
I didn't even remember a trailer for it. I remember it came out and I just didn't like, there was, you have all those little, those things that pique your interest, right? Whether it's an actor, director, the tone of a trailer or whatever. And that had nothing in it. I don't like her. I think she's super hot, but like fake hot, like AI hot. So it's not like, I don't think it's a real person. So I have literally no interest. Yeah. Like even more than a normal, like I could tell you that this movie star is attractive, but because there's such a huge difference between me and her, I don't care. I don't care how hot she is.
You know who is that for me right now? And it's going to be Austin Butler, the guy who played Elvis in the latest Elvis movies. He was in
He's too hot for you, so you don't care.
But, okay, so yes, basically, yeah, I'll admit it. Sure. So, Band of Brothers, great series, right? Band of Brothers, great. The second one, The Pacific, not as good, but still okay. So they just did another one. Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, just did it called like Masters of the Air. It's planes. I was excited about it, but Gerard Butler is the star in it, and every time he's on screen, he's like, "Oh, I'm so fucking hot." I'm like, I don't believe that you're real. I don't believe you're in an airplane. I don't believe you were sent to war. Like you're just too movie star. You're too much of a movie star. You look like a movie star. You look like James Dean grafted onto the face of, I don't know who was another handsome.
Did you say Gerard Butler?
No, Austin Butler.
Okay. You said Gerard Butler, and I was like, wait, are you changing topics? Got it. Okay.
I don't know. Austin Butler.
How many butlers do you think are handsome?
All of them. All the butlers. I don't know. He's just, but anytime he's on TV, but so I get that. Like when, Megan Fox, absolutely. She's ridiculously hot.
She's like too hot to
I
to
met
find
her.
attractive.
Did I tell you when I met her?
Was it the same day that she walked by me at the watch place?
It must have been because did she have a goat with her?
A goat?
Yes, like a little
By
goat,
the way, killer segue coming up.
a little baby
No,
goat. So
no.
I was working at that shitty place that I worked at for a long time, and we were packaging up a package like a camera package for I don't know her ex husband is Brian Austin Green, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that might be right.
Car pulls up, he hops out, he's like putting together the camera package, checking it out, testing it. We're showing him all the pieces are there. All of a sudden, this little goat hops out of the car and like, little baby goat hopping around. I'm like, well, that's cute. And all of a sudden, somebody's like, come back here, little goat. And Megan Fox gets out of the car. It's like, what? What is happening right now? And she's in like sweatshirt, sweatpants and a sweatsuit, playing with a little goat. She not, man. She just was. But like the goat, but we got to like play with a goat while setting up a camera. It was one of those moments where you're like, working in Hollywood is just
I was gonna say that's a pretty LA story.
so fucking surreal. You have a pet goat and you're just here in this garage while I rent you cameras. Like what planet am I on? Such a weird place.
Well, I visited a weird place that we talked about a long time ago. You plugged it as a really good movie, and it has a good goat in it. Well, that's not true. It has an evil goat in it.
I love evil goat.
But I watched 2023's When Evil Lurks Spanish movie.
Fuck yeah.
Damn. It was Rumi had hyped this and said it was great. I had heard good things about it. And it's funny because Rumi gave us a couple scenes from it, and he did like spoil the bigger scenes, but we did it like 2 years, like we recorded it a year or two ago. So when I watched it the other night, it was one of those like something would come on the screen like the goat, and I'd be like, oh, he said something about the goat. What did he say? And then the scene would unfold, usually pretty quickly. And I was not prepared. And even though I had some foreknowledge of what was going to happen, I didn't quite remember including the hardest part to watch, which right when it was about to happen, I was like, wait, I know that he said something about that dog. And then it waited a minute or two, and then the scene does tense it up. And I was like, oh, yeah. I think I remember. And then the dog just destroys this little girl. But When Evil Lurks, it's a Spanish movie. It opens with these two guys, and they hear a gunshot outside at night. The morning they start to investigate. They find a decimated body, just a body messed up, and like a suitcase full of weird artifacts. They look a little religious and also like map making equipment. They know what it is, but we don't. So immediately, and I love this, you're like, and they're talking about there's the person that got killed was called a cleaner. And there's talking about the cleaner, and you're like, okay, so clearly there's a mythos here that you know about, but I don't know yet. Then they go to this house, and there's this big, gluttonous, tumor-ridden, fat, giant person,
like Seven level from the movie Seven, like the guy
even worse than that.
Yeah,
and
they
gross. Say they use the word possessed, and they use what's the other thing what's the one that they call them?
I don't know what is the word that they call them.
There's a word that
they're like demons or something. Like I don't know.
They call them something though. The look it up while I say it. But they call this. They say the word possessed. So you're like, he's possessed by a demon, but they don't really explain or elaborate that. And it was clear that the cleaner was supposed to come here and kill this possessed person in a specific way. They very quickly mention if you use firearms, it makes it worse. And they very quickly explain that you can't use it. You can't kill it in the wrong way. Otherwise, it makes it worse. But they don't elaborate on it because of the nature of the scene, and everyone else in the scene knows it. And it's high stakes scenes. So I love movies that start like this.
Rotten. They call them rotten.
That's right. Someone who is rotten. And it's like, I love the fact that and there's characters talking about it, and they're like, well, when did you call it in? They said, we called it in a year ago. And they said they didn't send the cleaners till now. So then they go to the police and they're like, dude, there's a rotten in this lady's house and you haven't cleaned it yet. They're like, well, we just dispatched a cleaner yesterday, but it's been a year. So clearly, like, there have been other rottens. There's these cleaners, whatever they are supposed to take care of the rottens. There's rules for how to deal with rottens, and everyone else knows it, but the audience does it. And I love that because it intrinsically makes it intriguing, because you're like, immediately, if I'm like, hey, there's an awesome backstory here, your first question is going to be, what's the backstory? And then if you're like, well, it's about rottens, but that's all you say, my next question is just immediately, instinctively going to be, wait, what's a rotten? And when you're a movie that, like this one, kind of doles out this mythos over the time of the movie, while you don't necessarily need to understand what the significance of certain things are as they're happening. I feel it's really paced well in that way. And I do love that. I don't want to say gimmick, but that ploy of making a movie where you're like, hey, we're starting in the middle of some sort of apocalypse and we're not going to tell you how we got here. Maybe by the end you'll know, or you'll have some idea whether it matters or not.
I still don't, but it doesn't matter. I get the premise. Like that's the thing.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't think I don't know if you're supposed to know or if the movie didn't care to know. But it's like,
you don't need to know how you got there. That's the whole thing. But the idea, like, there's so many movies that, like, you get the exposition on it first. They're like, whether it's a title crawl or there's a new person who comes into the situation and someone explains what's happening. But, like, there's so many movies that tell you at the beginning. Like Jurassic Park would, like, just off the top of my head.
Dino DNA.
I mean, I didn't even think of that, but just they get there and John Hammond says, I have a park that has dinosaurs at it. Yeah. You get there, they land, they walk out and they see dinosaurs. So boom, that's the whole premise of the film right there. If you had started that movie where the power in the park goes down, and then after the movie started, explained to me that this was that, it changes some of the pacing and I guess if you think of a movie as a roller coaster, it's starting you kind of halfway going down that first drop, as opposed to starting you at the beginning where it starts going up. And I think you can fail doing that for sure, and you can't do it every time. But this is a movie where it does it well, and all I wanted was more. I wanted more movie. I wanted more information. I wanted more scenes.
This movie starts you wake up already on the of the roller coaster. You wake up.
Oh, yeah.
Already going up the hill, and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah, what roller coaster am I even on?
What roller coaster am I on? I don't remember being in line for this roller coaster. Am I even tall enough for this ride? I didn't check my lap bar. Is this safe? Is yours wiggling as much as mine? I get really paranoid on roller coasters. I don't like them. So I would have a lot of questions. This movie's so fucking good. And there's a moment, again, where it's like, you don't know the rules, but it affects animals. And there's a moment where a guy finds his goat and he's like, oh, look, it's that goat's bad. And you don't know why he knows that goat's bad, but he pulls out his gun. His pregnant wife is like, don't shoot it. You know that's bad too. You can't shoot him.
Yeah, she's like, leave it alone and definitely don't shoot it.
Don't shoot it. Shooting it makes it worse. She walks up
and she's got an axe. She's like, use the hatchet.
Yeah.
And he aims this double-barreled shotgun at the goat. Do you remember what the goat does?
The goat goes, fucking do it, and walks and puts his head right against it. And you're just like, oh, that is cold.
And you don't know what is happening in this situation, but this is now the second time that a character has said out loud, don't kill something or someone with a gun, because that only makes it worse. So you don't know what's happening, but you're trusting the characters that they know what's happening. And he pulls the trigger and this goat's head fucking erupts. And you're like, whoa, that's awesome. But before you can punctuate that exclamation, the wife's axe is buried in his face, and she hits him a couple times with the axe. And you're like, oh my God, she just fucking murdered him. And you're like, I do not understand what's going on. I got that the goat was supposedly evil or something was the matter. This man had just disposed of a rotten somehow that was not the correct way. And before you can even finish that thought, the woman takes the axe, inverts it, and slaps herself. Well, not slaps, jacks it into her own face
Pregnant lady.
repeatedly.
A pregnant
Oh,
lady.
that's right. That's right. And you're like, damn, you killed a pregnant lady.
That's like in
She
the
killed
first
herself.
15 minutes. Yeah. That's like 15 minutes into this movie. And it's like,
And it's a brutal, like it's a brutal sequence. Like she hacks him. And then when you're like, wow, I can't believe. And then she does it to her own face. And you see it, I think, from at least two different angles. And it's repeated. It's a repeated action.
So gnarly. The dog kill is out of control. Then they like escape into the countryside and they're trying to like regroup to solve it. And they go to this like abandoned school and there's all these like demon possessed children that are kind of like kept there, which is so creepy. It's full of like really creepy, fucked up moments and just man, the atmosphere in it, the lore of it all. That's one of the best horror films to come
And
out
there's
in a
the
long
scene with
time.
the dog. The scene with the dog kill is this. So these guys dispose of this rotten, and
Badly.
the one guy's
they
wife
lose
kills
it.
himself.
They
Well,
lose
they
yeah.
meant to go drop him off somewhere,
Yeah.
and the rotten that they were transporting in the back of a truck like falls out maybe,
Climbs
and
out. We don't know.
and they're like fucking whatever, we're just leaving. One of those guys is the goat pregnant wife guy, and the other two are brothers. They're the main characters, and they realize that this is going to get bad. So they need to get away. They decide to run. They go and pick up their family members. They're in a split family, and the main guy is divorced, and his wife is clearly remarried. And you have this scene where he essentially kicks in the door to his ex-wife and her new husband and kids from both marriages, three kids that from both marriages. One of them ends up being a severely autistic kid with mental challenges. He comes in. The kids are excited to see their dad. The woman is pissed that he's there, stripping in their living room, demanding clothes and for everyone to get in the car. And it's like a mad scene where these kids are all so excited to see their dad. He's very serious, like, holy shit, we got to get out of here. And he's fucking naked.
Something on that. The stripping of the clothes. There's like folk superstition around all this. That to me seemed like some plague shit. Like when they're like, "Oh, you better hang lavender from your doorstop to keep the plague out." Like they don't know what causes it, and they're like, "Well, you got to take your clothes off if you come in contact because it might be." Like they don't know, and there's so much of that where you're like, "Is that really part of the lore, or is this some sort of folk superstition?" Because you guys have no fucking clue. And I love that aspect of he's like, "I got to take my fucking clothes off," because it really just adds to this paranoia. And you're like, that doesn't seem like that would work, but you believe that he believes it. So you're like, well, I guess I better do that. And if somebody told you that with that much anxiety and earnesty and like just urgency, take your clothes off. You got to take it off or you're going to get infected. Like, I'd be like, oh shit. Oh.
And he's like stripping in this family's dining room.
Yeah.
But the new husband is like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, we have to go now. Wake everybody up, get everybody, don't take anything. I just need to change of clothes. And he's like literally stripping while that happens. And then it's not a Rottweiler. I guess
like
it was
Mastiff. It's a huge fucking
It's a pretty
dog.
big dog, comes over and starts nosing the clothes, which immediately I'm like, well, that's not good. He's making such a big deal. I don't know the rules here, but he's making a big deal about getting those clothes off. And the movie is showing me this dog rooting around in his clothes. And they do it in at least one, if not two shots. So then the grown-ups are all arguing. And while the grown-ups are arguing, this little girl who maybe is 7 years old, comes up and starts petting the dog on the head. And I was like, oh shit. I know Rumi said something about a dog, but I don't remember what happens. And she's petting the dog on the head. She starts like almost ring around the rosieing around the dog, petting him and touching him. And the dog is just sitting there, not acting weird at all, but it's really tense. And I wonder if anybody who's seen that scene that didn't listen to Rumi say something had happened. I mean, it's clearly set up that something's going to happen. You don't have to.
You just don't expect it to be that clear.
And then it cuts to a shot of kind of like over the dog and the little girl's POV, and they're standing next to each other, looking at the grown-ups who are kind of not in the background, but in the midground, and they're yelling at each other, arguing. And while that happened, the dog just and like a whip snap, like a snake eye, just grabs that girl and pulls her down out of frame. And you're like, oh my God, that was so brutal. And then you see a scene of the almost like the reverse shot, and he is whipping her back and forth like a rag doll, and nobody is noticing yet because they're yelling. Once they notice, they start chasing the dog. The dog goes under the table with her. It runs out and it's shaking her like crazy. It's just
Horrifying.
shy of being hard to watch. And the worst part for me was when he comes in and this scene starts to unfold. I was like, I love this movie, and I love something that Aaron always says is that a horror movie or a monster movie, it's usually grounded in some sort of real fear, right? And a lot of times the monster is a metaphor or an analogy for something, and the monster is not just the scary thing, right? We're really talking about expectations of family. We're really talking about how the average person doesn't understand medicine as much as we think we do, and when the system shuts down, we don't know what to do. All these different things that horror really is about, the horror that can be committed within a family, all these different things. And a monster movie or a horror movie is just a way to kind of expand on that and say, listen, this movie is kind of about how your mother can like fuck you up, but also there's a monster involved, and the monster represents that, right? So I'm thinking that, and I'm like, okay, even though I have no idea what is happening in this movie with the mythos and the rotted and stuff like that, and I don't know where this movie's going to go because we're still only like a half hour in.
Yeah.
I was like, this is a scary movie as a parent, and I have a hard time turning that off now as a parent. But like I'm watching, I'm like, okay, imagine that me and Amanda are split, and she has custody of the thing that is most important to me is my son. Like, and there's nothing in the world that touches how important he is. What if I knew something she didn't, and I couldn't make her believe it, and I had to go get him? Because it clearly gets to a point where he is going to take those kids and leave that wife there. And I was like, fuck, that is some heavy shit. And then all of a sudden, and this dog just chomps on this little girl. And I'm like, oh my God, that is the physical manifestation of what I am currently feeling in the scene, right? I'm worried about my son in this scene, and now my proxy, my son is getting eaten by a dog. Holy
But
fuck!
it doesn't end, man. So they go out looking for the dog because he knows that the dog's spreading the demon shit. He's also looking for the corpse of this little girl, and then he can't find the dog, he can't find the body, so he's like, well, I got to go back and get the two sons. So he goes back to the house, and the little girl's there, completely fine, and he's like, no,
We
no,
see
no,
the
no.
stepdad shoot the dog before that, though.
Yeah. Which, boo.
The guy's
no,
like,
no,
don't
no.
use a gun.
But the little girl and the mother's like, oh, you're okay. And she's hugging her and she's hugging her. And you're
Does
like,
it hurt? Does it hurt? The little girl's like, no.
yeah, I'm fine. And you're just like, no.
No.
Like, it just, everything gets worse. And this movie just keeps dragging you down. And just when you're like, oh, it's going to be okay. No, the movie gets worse. Oh, they're going to save him. No, it gets worse. Oh, thank God they made it to here. No, it gets worse. Like it is bleak in a way that I loved. I normally hate bleak movies like I don't know, The Road, but like I don't need that. Where the mist ends, I don't need that.
See,
But
it's funny that you're saying that because I was going to use the word brutal. It's brutal up to a point that's just before what I can't take anymore.
Yeah.
Because like The Road is a movie where like I have nothing against it, and it is a good movie, good story, well made. I don't need to see that because that was not an enjoyable movie going experience for me. That's what it was trying to do. It wasn't trying to be enjoyable. It succeeded in doing what it did.
Yeah.
But this movie I would watch again, and I think it's really interesting. You said bleak, and it is. It's very bleak. It is very soul stomping in a certain way, but in a way that is satisfying as a audience member, if that makes sense.
I think it feels so real because nobody will help you. I don't trust the cops to come help in a situation like this. I don't expect the government to help in a situation like this. And even the experts who say they could help, it's too far past their hopelessness. It's like too far past the point of no return. And I feel that way about like certain aspects of stuff that's happening now that makes you feel bleak and hopeless. But this movie, like you said, it has enough zombies and crazy death, rotten shit going on that I'm like, yeah, amped up about it. Like it does a great job building you up to be able to get through that bleakness. which
And it
is
shows a
weird.
lot, a lot of headshots, a lot of access to the heads, a lot of pieces getting cut off, like a lot of gore and violence, but without, and I guess it is graphic, but again, without being too much, without being graphic for the sake of. And I think that I guess like if you show something off screen, you have your imagination and there's that aspect of it. Whereas if you show something, sometimes that's a gut punch, sometimes that's making a statement, sometimes it's trying to shock you or whatever. This, all the gore and all the hard shit you see in this movie, it's important that you see it. They show you it for a reason, and it looks fucking fantastic. And
This
it
is
is like a slap in the face every time.
this has a 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb, and I'm like, what?
Who's rating this?
Who's rating this? This is a high 7 for me, maybe even in the 8s. Like this is
Oh
probably
yeah,
my
I got to see it again, but I'd give it an 8 easy.
this
Maybe
is like
maybe a 9.
yeah, this is like one of my favorite horror movies of last
Yeah.
year, up next to like Evil Dead Rise and shit, where it's like it is that good to me. It is the only thing I'm knocking off for it is I'm lost on the lore, but like you said, maybe that's okay. But I'm angry. It like you said, it's doing something right. I'm mad that I don't understand it, but I think that's part of what makes the movie work.
Hmm.
If you were up to your elbows in something you don't understand to the point that it's an apocalyptic thing, you know, like a science, this is magic, but like imagine there was maybe a science that you didn't understand, but it's causing an apocalyptic level disaster that nobody can help you with. Wouldn't you feel lost and hopeless?
Hmm.
And I think that that helps with this movie.
Oh, I
I think,
totally agree.
you know,
It's interesting too. Something that I really enjoyed to the point of like wanting to do more research about it is Spain and Latin countries are not known for their film production, right? And that doesn't mean that they don't do it. It's just like, we, I think, have the big, well, I guess India, but like India, Japan, America, those are the biggest film production countries that I can think of off the top of my head. There's plenty of others that have decent or have big ones, but like, when was the last time you heard buzz and American theatrical releases from a Spanish uh, company, right? Like a Spanish language movie, there's really not many. And the fact that this movie did so well, including in our country, is really cool. And it made me think of what's the 30 coins?
30 coins, yeah.
That's,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if that's Spanish, but it also is a Latin movie. I think it is Spain.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting that we're in an era right now where we're starting to see some of these international pieces coming from different places like Spain. It's not just all the bigger
You want to know why?
production companies. Yeah, tell me.
Because in other countries they're making 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 million dollar movies that can explore cool things and do cooler stuff. In America, you can only make a multi
Right. You can only make a Marvel
yeah,
movie.
I can only afford to make a $120 million
That makes sense.
movie. And they have destroyed the market because of streaming and because of corporate just everything flowing to the top and everything is consolidated. Who's making movies right now? Disney? Warner Brothers?
Right. Oh, we talked about this when you were here
A24?
yeah.
There's only a handful of people making movies, and nobody can afford to make a movie that's this big. When Evil Lurks isn't a giant budget film, and America has killed their market for that. So other countries are like, well, shit, I want to see a cool, Evil Dead like movie, so I'm gonna make my own. I have my own story to tell, and they can get funding for a $4 or $5 million movie. I don't know what the budget was on this, but it's not huge. It's big enough to be cool, but it's not like a massive.
Yeah,
Doesn't
yeah.
feel like a huge budget film.
Well, it's interesting too, because I bet you how you finance a movie and how much a movie costs is different in any other country other than America. But every country is different, right? But there's such an inflation right now here. But I would think, especially in the film business, there's such an inflation because, like you said, you can't have some random dildo be a character in a movie.
Yeah.
Everyone has to be Chris Evans. Everyone has to be Christopher Walken. You know what I mean? You can't just have actor who maybe was in a couple TV shows be in a movie. It's got to be someone that everybody recognizes. So your
Yep.
budget's going crazy just by having people in it, you know? I have no idea if the people in this movie are big Spanish actors or not, but I would think us and maybe India have crazy budgets for that reason alone, you know?
I
Maybe
can't
Japan.
I can't find any information on how much it cost. I can find out like it didn't make a ton of money.
Are you
It
looking
did.
in dollars or pesos?
I don't. I don't think that's how it works. I don't know. Like, yeah, I can't find it, but like, because now I'm really curious. Like, how much was it? Yeah, well, that's why it's not recorded because Americans couldn't do the math, so they were just like, whatever.
It definitely though, like this of all the movies that we've talked about so far tonight, this is my biggest. It's my only. You have to go see this. Although I would say that about Night of the Creeps, but Night of the Creeps is fun and it has a really good place. But like, damn, this movie blew. I would say this movie blew my hair back. This movie blew my hair back to the point where I was like, damn, I could. I'm interested in talking about this with Erin. That's always a mark, a watermark of how good a movie is. But it also is like, I want to watch this again. And knowing more about this, the whole thing now, when I second and third watch it, what am I going to see that I didn't see before? What am I going to understand about the first couple breadcrumbs of exposition and backstory we get? Now that I know more about it and I know what the last crumbs were, do those littler crumbs at the beginning help more?
But he's trying to set up the cleaner equipment. Did you have that like flashback to watching some kid on Legends of the Hidden Temple try to put together the golden monkey statue where you're like, could just yeah, I mean, you just got to do
Like,
this.
I know how to do it. Yeah.
Like I don't even know how to do it, but I feel like I could in that instance. I'd be like, I know how to put this together. Like you see somebody do it once, but he's got to put together this contraption. It looks like a sextant on top of a I don't know, an astrolabe
Yeah.
mixed together. You're like, what is this? Are you traveling the seas with it? I want to know what that machine does. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
now, like, oh man. But it's like, imagine if, like, the equivalent is like you find a case and it's full of like wooden stakes and holy water, and you're like, oh, I know how to use that. But like, you have no clue what this machine does or this
Right.
equipment is for. But, in that moment, I was like, oh, let me help you. How many idiots does it take to put together?
A rotten sexted killer.
I don't know, man. I loved it. I seriously love that movie. I'm all jazzed up now. Did you let Kent watch it?
Kent made it through like the first half.
Yeah.
Um, I'm tired. I'm trying to think of a joke that applies to it. No, I haven't. Kent and I've been doing, like I think I said in our last episode, Erie, Indiana. He loves Tales from the Crypt Keeper.
The
Loves it.
cartoon
Loves
show,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, he loves it.
So,
And he loves, big time loves our man Ghostface. He's
okay.
going around the house booing people. Boo, boo, booing people. He's really getting into the idea of being scared and scaring people.
Yeah.
And arf arf arf. He's all about arf arf arfing. And that's like the best scare you can get is if you can arf 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 each other.
Jump out on your hands and knees and yell, arf, arf, arf. Scares
Yep.
people to death. So good.
Yep.
So Sammy has been into some spooky stuff. She woke up one morning and she goes, Daddy, what other creatures make a mess? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like what? She's like, like the leprechaun made a big mess at my school. I was like, I don't know, like gremlin. And she's like, can I see a picture of a gremlin? I was like, yeah, all right. So I show her a picture of the gremlins. And she was like, why are they wearing hats? I'm like, because they're really silly. But they make a big mess. I was like, yeah, you want to see them make a big mess? And she's like, yeah. And I showed her the scene where the gremlins are in the bar trashing the place from the first Gremlins movie.
pretty
And
big mess.
She was like, that's hysterical. She was laughing. She thought it was so funny. She's like, who's going to clean that mess up? I showed her that they were puppets. I showed her some of the puppets. And then I was like, you know what? Let's watch it. So we watched Gremlins. I fast forward through some key moments, but let her watch most of the Gremlins mayhem. And she thought it was great. She thought it was scary. The part that scared her the most is when he jumps in the swimming pool. She's like, he doesn't have his life vest on. There's no adult there. His mommy and daddy aren't there. And then the pool starts smoking and light starts flashing. And she's like, Daddy, I'm too scared. Turn it off. And then like the next in a couple days later, she's like, "Can we finish the movie? I want to see what happens." And I was like, "Okay." So we finished the movie. And then she's like, "Okay, let's watch the next more Gremlins movies." And I was like, "There's only two. They don't make an infinite amount." In her mind, there's always another
Right,
in the
there's a
wing.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we watched Gremlins 2. And again, I only had to fast forward through the talkie-talkie stuff. She got to watch all the Gremlins stuff. But it's so funny because she has no context for what certain things are. She does not know what a gun is. She does not know what they do. She does not know why that some of the people have guns. She doesn't know what a paper shredder is. And there's a scene where a gremlin gets shoved in a paper shredder and she's like, "What's happening?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's a gremlin smusher. It's smushing that gremlin." She's like, "Okay." She's going to see a paper shredder and be like, "Oh, it's a gremlin smusher, y'all." And I'm going to be like, "Wait, what?" She doesn't know why you would shred paper.
She's like, no, don't put paper in there.
Put a gremlin in there. We have a gremlin shredder? And you're like, "Yep, we do."
I got a gremlin shredder in the garage.
Gremlins 2, I mean, we all know Gremlins 1. Gremlins 1's pretty fun, pretty great, does its thing. It's super weird. Like, there's a big level of like, who is this for? Because it appeals to me
Right.
younger than the audience it then sets itself up to be. Because you're like, this is for like 7 or 8 year olds. And it's like, there's no Santa Claus. My dad died being Santa Claus. And you're like, well, that's for like older kids or adults. Like, why would you put that in your movie? Now you've just like, I don't know. It's such a bizarre movie. Such a weird choice. So then the sequel is basically a giant middle finger to itself. It's like, idiots, you gave us a bunch of millions of dollars to make a stupid fucking Gremlins movie. What a bunch of morons. Like, it hates itself. And it continually does things. It's just like, Warner Brothers, suck it. You're like, why would you be so hateful towards the audience, towards the studio, towards anybody who came to see this movie? Like, it's so baffling, man. What do you remember of Gremlins 2?
I've watched it recently because Kent is into Gremlins. Kent watched Gremlins years ago. The first, actually, we've watched both of them. I don't remember how we came upon Gremlins 2 again, but like within the last 2 months, we watched it.
Because it's more fun for kids.
Yeah, and I think I was probably the exact target demo when it first came out.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I didn't realize it was stupid. I didn't realize it was silly. I didn't realize I was being marketed to so hard, But like it's fun as fuck. It's a complete I think you forget if you haven't seen them close together, but it's a very different tonal change because Gremlins 1 is very kooky and funny and silly, but they are outright murdering people. And they don't shy away from that when they're doing it. It's just not the only thing that they're doing. So they are kooky sometimes. And sometimes the kookiness leads to murder. Sometimes they're flat out murdering. The next one, it's a different era. It's like 10 years later or something, I guess, right? It's the 90s.
Early 90s.
And it's definitely like silly Ewok bullshit. But like it's fun. It's a movie chock full of puppets. Does it make sense why there's so many different kinds? Nope. How much do I care about it? Zero. I think it's fun that they made different characters out of the evil Mogwai and Gremlin. Like there's 4 or 5 distinct. They don't do anything different.
There's a mean one. There's a meaner one. There's a stupid one, and then there's an even stupider one.
Right?
like that's like I was like, "Sammy, how can you tell?" She's like, "He's silly." I was like, "How do you know she's silly? He's making a silly face." I was like, "Well, what about this one?" She's like, "He's really silly." How can you tell? She's like, "Because his eyes go like this."
And you literally, as the audience, you hear choo-choo train noises while his eyes are rolling and steam comes out of their ears. But like, you know what? Great. It's fun. I would say it's a different flavor, but it's as fun as the first one is. It's not as good of a film, so to speak, but like it's fun and it functions. I don't think it was trying to do anything different than exactly what it did.
But it's just weird that those choices were made. Like, because
totally.
It is very vindictive to itself. It's like, because like multiple times they're like my favorite part is Billy's trying to explain to the security force. He's like, "Can't feed him after midnight." Wait a second.
Right.
What if I eat a bagel? I get a chia seed stuck in my tooth, and then it's past midnight. It comes out, gets dislodged. Does that break the rules? what if I'm in an international flight and I cross time zones? Got to be
Right.
midnight somewhere. He's like, I didn't make the rules. And I just think it's so funny that the movie's like, this is so stupid. But then there's this moment where it gets super bizarre and meta, where the film melts and the VCR crackles and the gremlins are in the movie slash TV. And then this lady comes out and goes, this movie's terrible. I can't believe it's worse than the first one. Like the gremlins won't even finish the movie and it's awful. And he's like, oh, fine. I guess I'll go fix it. And he goes into the audience and he's like, Hulk Hogan, can you fix this? And he's like, hey, gremlins, get out of the booth. When people come to the movie, they want hot popcorn and cold sodas. And he's like being Hulk Hogan. Now play that movie or I'm going to come up there and kick your ass. And they play the movie. Sammy's like,
Yeah.
for so many reasons.
Right.
For one, 4-year-olds don't understand meta humor. 2, she doesn't understand what a projection is.
Sure. Right. Because there's actually 2 versions of that joke, one that played in the theaters and one that played on home video.
Yeah.
It's the same joke and the same premise, but it looks different. And I think there might have been different people in it. But regardless, neither one of those functions as streaming media, right?
She doesn't get any of it.
Or
3,
DVD. Yeah.
why does that guy rip his shirt off? Well, he was famous when I was a little kid, and he ripped it. That was his thing. He did. He ripped his shirt off. Yep. Why did he rip
She
his
was
shirt
like,
off?
and you guys paid him money for that?
Yeah.
You guys were applauding for that?
And then she like, can I see a picture? Well, sure. You just Google Hulk Hogan.
Right.
And she's like, why he do that? And I was just like, I don't, because is he angry? Well, yeah, he's pretending to be angry.
Right.
Why? Who's he mad at? I was like, this guy. Here's Macho
Gotta
Man
watch
Randy
WWE, bro.
and she's like, he's wearing a Barbie hat. Because
And you're like, you're astute. You're calling it like you see it, girl. I can't argue with any of
a
that.
big bedazzled cowboy hat. That's Barbie. Barbie wears that. Just like,
She is not incorrect.
cracking me the fuck up. So yeah, we've been watching Gremlins like a lot. So she likes.
There's
she
a
likes
new
Gremlins.
cartoon, well, newish cartoon show last couple of years. I think it's on Netflix. I think it's
Magic of
called
the
Tales of the
Mogwai?
Mogwai.
Yeah.
Kent and I watched the first couple minutes of the first episode. I have and not enough for me to base anything on. Have you
Gremlins.
guys done that yet?
No, there's no Gremlins in it. So
Oh, it's just Mogwai?
I don't know. I don't know. Are there Gremlins in it?
Oh, I don't know. You said it's so authoritarian. I thought you knew
Oh.
what you were talking about.
I just have the feeling she, her Grogu. She has a little Grogu that goes. He like moves. He is now her Mogwai, and she'll be like, "Daddy, give him a bright light," and she'll play Gremlins now. So she has the Mogwai. She's like, I'm protecting my Mogwai. I'm protecting my Gizmo. And she's like, you be the mean gremlin. I'm like, Gizmo, caca. And she'll like hit me with the bright light. And then she'll be like, don't get wet or eat after did bite. Again, doesn't know what midnight is. But if you ask her, you're like, what does the clock do at midnight? She goes, puts her hands up above her head. Both hands up. It's great. It's super fun to share like horror movies with her. And I don't know what like where to expand that from, but we'll figure it out.
Gremlins 1 is a good place to start with horror.
Yeah.
We just tried to do Are You Afraid of the Dark the other day, and it was one Paramount, and Paramount was crashing. It wasn't working. But the beginning, you remember the intro was like a very blue, purple lit thing with some spooky music. He was like, "This is spooky," and then it froze, and I was like, "Ah, damn, I had him." And I was gonna show him a vampire episode. That's it's definitely vampires, and there's some menace in it, but not bad. There's a killer clown episode, but I think it's like the 3rd or 4th episode in the whole show. I was like, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna show him that one a little bit later.
But like when you look up like good places to start for like kids in horror movie, like Hotel Transylvania, sure. Nightmare Before Christmas, all right. Sure. Paranorman, maybe. That looks
Then
like
I
fun.
started watching Monster House, and he was into it.
Yeah.
Monster House is pretty good. And Monster House, I don't know if you remember, but it starts off pretty scary. And then an old man has a heart attack and dies, and an ambulance comes and takes him away. And you're like, and then they they don't like not mention that. It's not like literally happening in the background. There's a scene where the kids are watching that happen. They're like, oh my God, he died. The ambulance is taking him away. And you're like, oh shit. Like it's not even one of those, like, how do I explain that to my kid? It's like, you explained it. He's got no questions. He knows that old man came running out of the house like a madman, yelling at them, and then passed out dead. And then the house literally is turning into a monster. Like literally the house is moving and trying to eat them and stuff.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And that's a pretty good one. And he was into that. But I also think the fact that it's a cartoon. No.
Like Halloween, like I can't do like the one like Monster High. No way.
No, because it's like I think there's a difference between horror and kid shows or movies that feature creatures or horror in it. You know what I mean?
Big time.
Like Horror High is one of them. You said another one before. I forget what you said. It was an animated one a couple sentences ago, and you said something. It was like there was monsters and creatures, but they're not doing shit scary.
Hotel Transylvania.
Yeah, that's not a scary movie. It's the Addams Family. But even for the Addams Family was taking spooky concept. But that was taken for adults, most of it. The most recent animated ones are for kids, and Wednesday is kind of for kids. But that's taking a spooky concept and kind of stretching it out so it's not as concentrated, scary, and fits another genre almost. That's what it really is. It's a comedy wearing a horror mask, right? Something like that.
So every now and then there's a Dracula joke, but at the end of the day, it could be interchanged with any characters. It didn't.
Sure. And Dracula didn't eat anybody. Nobody got scared. No, like there was no malice. There was no threat. You know what I mean? I think you need, like in Gremlins 1, there's a threat. In Gremlins 2, there's not really a threat. I think one person dies, maybe two.
A couple gremlins pop out and claw people up pretty good.
In the second one? But they're not dead. I don't think they die.
No,
I think someone gets electrocuted. He dies. That was Christopher Lee, right?
Christopher Lee, yeah.
I think he's the only one that dies, that we know that dies.
I wonder if I never saw the like Scooby-Doo movies that came out like I don't know, early aughts. Might be worth checking out because for me, the Scooby-Doo cartoon was a great gateway horror because I always loved they had cool monsters, there was fun stuff happening.
And that was scary because the characters were scared. They were running away. Those the creatures always ended up being human, but they were trying to protect themselves and get rid of the kids,
Yeah. The thing that I'm always was wary or am wary about when it comes to like a Scooby-Doo movie is the whole like it's actually real monsters. Because I was like, that's the antithesis
right
of why Scooby-Doo was a thing. They were debunking the monsters. And then like every now and then they'd be like, oh, we couldn't solve this mystery. If you make it about them being real, the first movie that you make, aren't you like, I don't know.
Is that what they were? Were they real monsters in the movies?
Thought so.
I don't know. I never saw them either. You want to watch them? I want to put it on our list of things that we want to do at some point.
Watch the Scooby-Doo movies? I don't know, man. They look really cheesy.
I know the creatures are baller. The creatures, like whether in universe they're real or fake, the monsters look awesome.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
The girls look awesome.
For 2002?
Are you going to say, the guy who plays Fred is just too handsome?
He's fucking just handsome. Oh, Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah. More like Freddie King Jr.
That's funny, man. Yeah, it's fun. I'm excited. Yeah, Gremlins. I'm excited to show her more spooky movies. But like, the thing is, I don't want to ruin her. Blumhouse just did some big survey. It was like, what got you into horror? What was your first horror movie? And the amount of people who said my mom showed me The Exorcist when I was way too young was like, damn, or like Halloween, or like Nightmare on Elm Street. That's somebody trying to fuck your kid up.
Yeah, you can't.
I saw this thing. I saw this fucking thing. It was like, my 12-year-old's getting into horror movies, but they kept saying that they weren't scary enough. So I showed him The Descent. You don't always know when you fuck up as a parent, but this time I fucked up.
I saw that one.
I guess my check for Monsters Under the Bed's going to go a little long this night. It's like, yeah.
Um,
I don't want to do that to her. I don't want to be a mean dad. I don't want to be a sadistic jerk to like scare the shit out of my kid. But I do want to show her if she's into it, if she likes it. I do want to show her scary movies while they're still scary. I don't want to
yeah,
wait. I don't want to wait too long to the point that like Nightmare on Elm Street is stupid because I
yeah.
waited too long. When I saw it, it wasn't scary. I came around to like them more later, but they were never scary. And it's like, bummer, you know?
It's interesting too, because maybe the term scary. Let me think about this. Maybe the term scary has a shelf life because like Kent and I watched 1930s Frankenstein, and like there's parts in it, like any horror movie, there's parts where I'm like, oh, this is your scary part. This is your scary scene. This is your, it's not so much jump scares back then, but like this was your big reveal of the monster. And you're like, there were probably people who were like grabbing the person next to their hand when that happened. And now it seems so tame for so many different reasons, especially to an audience who is just watching that for the first time. So I wonder if like, is there a time frame, not an age, but a time frame where the filmmaking technique, the narrative storytelling, the special effects, what we as an audience found scary as content in the 80s, where all that stuff becomes a certain level of obsolete. So it can only be so scary in that film or that product's future.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
Like the 30s can never show enough for us to be like, that's scary.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You and I would never ever lose sleep over 30s. Nor would Kent or Sammy. You know what I mean? Like to a
Carnival of
certain degree.
Souls. That one gets me. That one was
Yeah.
freaky. Well, it's just because like you
I
think
didn't
she's
see it till
safe.
college, and it was like snore zone for me. But
But there's a moment she's in the car, and then in
mm,
the reflection of the window, there's that creepy face, and you're
yeah,
like, you think you're safe in a car, and the
yeah,
ghost is following you there. Like that was the moment that got me for that movie. But again, you know, yeah, in the '80s you could now show it, and you could get visceral with it. You know, see bodies open up and shit. Then in 2000s, it's how mean can we get to people? How cruel can we be? How
hmm,
sadistic are we going to be? Torture. You know, how much of that can we show? Let's get extreme. I want that French extremism. I want that Asian horror extreme. Like that
yeah.
comes out in the 2000s. Now, like we're back to gore. Like let's amp that up. We can do gore even better now. Let's amp that shit up, and we're coming back around to hard gore. But like, is that scary? Or is it just tempering how much you can
It's
show
interesting.
on
I've
screen?
always thought it's so interesting how the palette and the flavor of a cinematic time period can be. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like not just horror, but horror I think is maybe it's the one I tune into most. But you can see like think about like the 50s, right? All the horror and sci-fi movies of the 50s had an atomic element to it. There's something going on there that you know in the world that is making us interested slash afraid of certain things at any given time. I think that's so interesting how our entertainment mirrors that, whether it's to try to comfort us against something or you know kind of put the flame up to something a little bit and say, yeah, this is scary, but let's have fun with it because it's a safe way to do it in a movie.
Yeah, I don't think we
Um,
get to do that much anymore because
no, well, I mean,
everything's either post-apocalyptic or zombies or you know again we've become very stale because of the budgets we're allowed to do and the type of
right,
stories that we're allowed to tell because it has to be an IP. You know, you got to slap a cape on it. It's got to be somebody we've seen before. You got to have a xenomorph in it or a ghost
right.
face in it. Like you can't explore things in a way that you know. That's why you got to make room for that's why we need to make room for independence again. I think we're going to backslide again, honestly, with the advent of AI. Because like in the '90s, people were asking me, "What are good VFX movies?" And I'm quoting like Ray Harryhausen. I'm quoting '80s special effects extravaganzas. Roger, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and those like, well, those aren't VFX movies. Yeah, because well, in the there aren't VFX in the '70s and '80s.
Right, right,
They
right.
give birth to it, and in the early 2000s, you get Jurassic Park. Bam, good VFX movie. Lord of the Rings, The Matrix. Bam, good VFX movies. The King Kongs, anything that Weta and ILM are doing, those are good VFX movies. But in the 90s, VFX becomes widely available because anybody with a computer can do them. They can't do them well. So
Right,
everything
right.
backslides. because producers are like, well, it tells the story. I don't need to put money in. It doesn't need to be Jurassic Park, y'all. So you get things like The Faculty, which are good movies, but the VFX suck. Blade
Yeah.
One, great movie. The VFX suck. And it takes a long time to catch back up with the quality that you got from the first time you saw it in Jurassic Park. The first VFX computer generated thing was the high watermark because everything backslid from that point. It literally
Right.
went so high, and everybody was like, oh shit. And it took a long time for that tank to balance out and the waves to settle. And now you get for pretty low budgets, you can get decent VFX. And for really high budgets, you can get pretty shitty VFX because you crushed down, you were trying to crush your overhead. So it's interesting how that all goes. But yeah, I think with the advent of AI, we're going to have that water tank effect again.
Yeah, yeah. I think that
Shit's
makes sense.
backsliding.
I was listening to everything you said, but I also got hit by a lightning bolt of scary movie children induction shit. And
Yeah.
I'm trying so hard to separate my own personal childhood from stuff because I think you have that giant nostalgia of something that scared the shit out of you as a kid, but you always were curious enough to look at it. There was a Disney movie of the week, 45-minute long film called Mr. Boogedy, which is on Disney Plus. Scared the fuck out of me. Not only do I remember that it scared me, I remember parts of it that scared me. And I remember my dad trying to like make it fun and me not fucking having it. It is about a family that moves into an old haunted house and they don't believe that it's haunted. They don't know it's haunted, but we, the audience, clearly see it's haunted. The man owns a practical joke and magic store. So the whole family is like silly
This
cartoon
kid has
family.
goofy eyes. Yeah.
One of the kids is the main kid in Alf, and the dad is the grown-up version of Stan who kills himself in It. He slits his wrists when It comes back.
Oh yeah.
When they walk into this house and the guy who's famous for playing
It's
Gomez
Eugene Levy.
Adams. No,
This looks
Eugene Levy's not in it.
Eugene Levy falls under the spell of the ghostly Mr. Boogedy, Howard Wright, in the Bride of Boogedy.
Bride of Boogedy is the sequel. This one, Gomez Adams plays this weird landlord who's there.
The original Gomez Adams for the TV show.
Correct. He's there.
Yeah.
Correct. Right. He's there. And I watched it again. When Disney Plus started up, I was so psyched that it was on there. And I was like, Kent, we got to watch this. And when it starts playing, I immediately was like, wait a minute. This is like a family movie. And Mr. Boogedy is, in my opinion, looking at it through my kid eyes, terrifying. But the rest of the movie is goofy. The whole family is playing practical jokes on each other the entire time. Before you actually see Mr. Boogedy and he starts fucking shit up, all the stuff that the ghosts are doing around the house are silly. It's silly, funny stuff that kids would laugh at. And when I said to Ken, oh my goodness, watch what happens here. He's going to make the toaster do this. He was laughing. And I remember as a kid thinking it was straight up horror. Like as a kid, I did not think it was something like, it wasn't like Gremlins, which clearly has a fun fantasy family element. I remember being terrified. The makeup I thought was terrifying. It is movie of the week shitty bullshit now when you watch it as an adult. But as a kid, I mean, as an adult watching it with my kid memories, I still kind of pulled the blanket up a little bit. You know what I mean? Mr. Boogedy.
That's funny.
But it was very fun. And I can see Kent being like, okay, Dad, like Kent will literally put his arm across me like a seatbelt when he's scared. So I know the parts that are scaring him and the parts that he thinks are cool. And usually I can kind of get him ready, be like, oh my goodness. Like in Ghostbusters is the best example. I was like, oh my goodness, watch what this librarian does. She's going to turn into a ghost. It's going to be silly. And for some reason that when it happened, I thought he was going to shit himself. He laughed maniacally, which I think he did as a defense mechanism. But because I told him it was coming, he wasn't scared when it happened. That happens now. I'll be like, oh man, watch what this guy's going to do.
Yeah, you have to set him up. You have to. He
loves Monster Squad. He thinks Monster Squad is the coolest movie.
That's awesome. We could do a whole episode on the starter kit
Yeah. That would be a good one.
Yeah, we should. Man, so much fun stuff to expose your kids to.
Boogity, boogity,
Boo!
boo! Fucking
What
4-year-old Matt ran right out of the room. I remember running out of the room.
what movies did you guys get exposed to? What was your first memory of horror movies? Was it something really scary? Did your dad show you The Exorcist when you were 3 just to see what you would do? Or was it a Disney Week movie? Let us know. Hit us up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Launchpad Pod, and our website, launchpadpod.com, and on YouTube. A couple plugs I got to throw up. No NDB podcast. I was on there the other day talking about the film industry, which was really fun. So go check those guys out. Jenna Elfman was
You're
on
doing
there.
a lot of podcasts.
I am, man. It's been really fun. My Saturday podcast is the Half Hour of Horror with Aaron McLean with my co-host. Oh, hey, it's Chase. Really doing some fun stuff with that. And of course, the Block of Horror. If you want to go to blockofhorror.com and go into a virtual horror world and go watch movies in there, check out a virtual video store with fake but fun real movies in there. And
That's worth going alone. Like I was going to give it a plug and say, guys, just go not only to support Aaron, but go check it out. It is a really fun world that they built, but the video store alone is worth it. You can go in there and actually look at videotapes. Rumi created all these
like 75 tapes.
Awesome movies that you would love to friggin' watch. So go in and just at least check that area out. But the whole thing, it's worth going and exploring. So please go do that.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So go check that out. And yeah, we'll be doing some stuff in there and doing more stuff here every other week. Launchpad Podcast. Rumi, there's one more thing we got to do. Let's blast this thing off. We're the Rocketeers, and we are out.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.